How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. If you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. As always, we got daily content coming out for you, and we have a game today at 1 p.m. against the Philadelphia Phillies, so we'll have you covered on all platforms there with clips, highlights, and more analysis. Obviously, we got Anthony Volpe in the lineup today leading off, so we always love to see our guy Anthony Volpe, and that's the main topic of discussion today. We want to talk about 3 ways that Anthony Volpe could find himself starting on opening day. There are a couple of different options now. If you look at some reports that are coming out, via The Athletic and some other people, they're saying that Anthony Volpe will likely start in AAA, which is what we both think. Ryan and I are kind of both on board with him starting in AAA, getting a couple of weeks of action, figuring out what happens with Gleyber Torres and IKF, and, some things still have to unfold there. But there are 3 ways that I think it's possible he ends up on the opening day roster. And for what it's worth, if he does end up on the opening day roster, I am here for it. I am down for that. He is ready. He's 21 years old, but the kid just looks like he's MLB ready, man. He's disciplined. He's patient. He has all the hit tools you want to see in a young major leaguer. And holding him back because of someone that's not going to be on the team in the future might be seen as malpractice. But again, it's difficult because you have Gleyber Torres, who's a pretty good player, and it's hard to bench a guy like that. It's hard to sit a guy like that in favor of somebody who's never taken an MLB rep before. So, we want to talk about the different ways here, Ryan. But before we do, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing good. As you mentioned, this is not an easy decision for the New York Yankees. Anthony Volpe is clearly really talented. Anthony Volpe has displayed all the things you would want him to display in a spring training. But it's a matter of, is Anthony Volpe really someone you're going to start over, as you mentioned, established major league talent, right? Gleyber Torres isn't a scrub, not by any stretch of the imagination. Gleyber Torres is a very good baseball player. You don't want to bench someone like that to start Volpe, and then if he struggles, now you don't know what you're doing at second base or shortstop. But with that being said, I'm really excited to see how we're gonna try to craft up a way to get that man on the roster.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I'll tell you what, I think that there's a couple of different ways, and some of them are more probable than others. Let's start with the first option, that is trading Gleyber Torres. That is the most likely option here, if we're being honest. I think Gleyber Torres is going to be traded. And do I want him to be traded? Not necessarily, but do I think that he is the only guy standing in the way of Anthony Volpe playing at second base? Yes, I do think that. Because Oswald Peraza, by most accounts, has the shortstop job locked up, unless IKF suddenly goes on a ridiculous tear, an injury happens. Even if IKF dominated the rest of spring training, I still don't think it's enough. Peraza has had his ups and downs. He had a solo homer yesterday, though, against the Toronto Blue Jays, which is really great. So he's definitely starting to see the ball a little bit better, as we want to kind of experience here. But his defense, obviously, you're talking about Gold Glove level defense from Oswald Peraza. The Yankees know, even if he struggles offensively right off the bat, pun intended, he's going to be an elite level defender immediately, and that's exactly what we need. IKF, the main reason we don't want to stick with him is because he botches routine ground balls. And also the contact is weak at times, but he gets on base sometimes, and he can hit for contact. Obviously, that's his main priority, and the primary kind of portion of his skill set. But when it comes to Oswald Peraza, you're getting a bona fide, legit defender. And I think the Yankees are okay knowing that that's his floor, right? Peraza's floor is an elite defensive shortstop. His ceiling, if he can actually continue to grow with experience in the offensive category, he could be a very nice shortstop for the future. And then the Yankees obviously know that Anthony Volpe could be an above-average defensive second baseman and one of the best hitters on the team in the future. So, there's a really nice combination here. The middle of the infield is certainly projected. We know what it's going to look like down the line. So it's just a matter of time before the writing's kind of on the wall with Gleyber Torres and he ends up getting traded. The question is, when is that going to be? Is it going to be now or is it going to be later? There's a really good argument to make that they should trade him now, because the more time you give Gleyber Torres to play, the more the odds are of a potential injury, hurting his value, hurting his stock. You're not going to be able to get what you maybe want in return for him. In addition to that, the more you play him, the less service time he has until he hits free agency, right? He has 2 full years left next year, obviously the second season, before he hits free agency in 2025. So the Yankees may want to move him now to a team that wants a full year with him under their belt, and obviously having him in the middle of their infield. I think that there's a strong argument to make that they should trade. If they're going to trade him, it should be now. That way they can promote Volpe and they don't have to wait, and then they can elevate their number one prospect and utilize him as a primary leadoff guy, whatever it might be. Again, I don't want to trade Gleyber Torres, but if they are going to, and the writing seems to be on the wall, I don't think there's a reason to wait on it. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so when if you're looking to trade Gleyber Torres, the way I can you can kind of on paper justify this is if you get a bat that you feel like you can throw into the outfield and you're going to get an upgrade offensively over what you have currently in left field. If you're able to do something like that, then you know what, you're taking a step back maybe offensively at second base because you have to deal with the growing pains of Anthony Volpe. But number one, Volpe's probably a better defender there, at least in terms of outs above average. Gleyber was average in terms of that metric, but was really good according to DRS. Volpe's a faster guy, so he's probably going to be a much better base runner. So you can kind of, put those two things to increase Volpe's WAR value. And if he's even a 107 WRC plus hitter, 105, is that a step back from Gleyber Torres? Absolutely. But as I mentioned, if you trade Gleyber Torres and you get an outfielder back that can hit, it doesn't even have to be a left-handed guy because it's not like you're trading a lefty for a righty. You're trading a righty for someone who would also be a righty. Now you're looking at a team where, your left field just got much better offensively, significantly better. But you are taking that little bit of a step back offensive at second base, but it evens itself out. You know what I mean? And also you're getting better at a multitude of positions. Again, as I mentioned, because of the base running and because of the defense at second base, Volpe has a pretty high floor, which is something people don't give him enough credit for. I've compared him to Marcus Semien in the past. Marcus Semien, again, that dude was a top 40 player according to Fangraphs WAR and a top 20 player according to Baseball Reference WAR last year. His OPS plus was under 110. His WRC plus was under 110. It was not an incredible offensive season for Semien, but because of his defensive base running, he was one of the best players in baseball. Volpe can totally do something like that. He can 100% pull that off. And again, you might be taking a slight step back offensively to start the year. Volpe, hopefully, you get a season where he progressively gets better throughout the year. But if you're taking that step forward at left field offensively, I think that you could really look at a deal like that and say it's beneficial for all parties involved. So, I think that's the way I would handle things. I would go, if I could find an outfielder on the market to trade Gleyber for, even if it means, trying to find some sort of way to match their value. I don't know how you'd have to do it, but if that's the way they can do it, I would 100% be on board for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. So we'll see how it unfolds here. But the second way I want to discuss is essentially, Volpe playing shortstop and not second base. I mean, I think it's pretty clear cut that he's capable of both. He was developed as a shortstop. Second base is really only the position he's going to play because Oswald Peraza is there and they want to give him an opportunity. So, him playing shortstop, that would suggest that either he beats out somehow he justifies, starting over Oswald Peraza. And so here's an interesting kind of narrative for you, Ryan. And this could be something to consider, right? Probably not the most likely scenario that Anthony Volpe takes over at shortstop, but would you rather have Volpe guaranteed starting reps at shortstop, or would you rather have Peraza sitting behind Gleyber Torres and waiting for that second base job to open up? I guess it's a matter of who they think is ready now, and Peraza's obviously the most ready. But one of those guys is going to be stuck behind Gleyber Torres until he's inevitably traded at some point in the future. So the question is, would you rather have Volpe starting at shortstop now over Peraza? Just because you want to get him in the opening day lineup, you want him, active and hitting and contributing to this team, or do you think Peraza's done enough to warrant getting that starting shortstop job and having the first crack at it with a year of experience, additional experience in AAA under his belt?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is, I want the Yankees to start Peraza at shortstop on opening day. I think the floor for him is way too high for the Yankees to try to mess around with that. His defense is immaculate. His base running is really good. He's shown off a much better eye at the major league level and at spring training than he's ever shown off at the minor league level. Not in terms of chase rates. His chase rates have always been low, but he's actually converting those into walks, which is interesting. If he can be a guy who continues to convert his, those at bats into walks, and, he is an okay guy when it comes to bat to ball skills, and okay at having, okay in terms of batting average, whether that's 240, 250, we're looking at a 250, maybe 330 OBP and a 400 slugging percentage. That's going to be good enough with his defense and base running to make him a 3-WAR player. Again, it's one of those things where, the Yankees evaluate and teams are evaluating their player value based on WAR, right? Yes, Peraza is someone who is not the hitter that Volpe is. He doesn't have the same talents, right? But you're looking at, again, number one, a year ahead in terms of development. Number two, the defense. It's that defense, man. And if it's as good as it's been advertised, and so far, and every time you've seen him play, it's been as good as advertised. This kid is going to save the Yankees a lot of runs at that position. And this is already a really good pitching staff. With no shift next year, it's this year it's going to be, or not no shift, but a restricted shift. There's more emphasis put at shortstop and second base. So it's not like Volpe is going to have an easier task at second base, or or not a difficult task. They're still going to rely on both of them in terms of their ability to have really good range and get to balls that they normally would be able to just be right in front of with the shift. But Peraza is just he's an otherworld defender, and I need to know what I have in Peraza before I start considering putting Volpe at shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one other kind of way he manages to find his way into the starting lineup on opening day, and that includes Gleyber Torres remaining on the roster and Giancarlo Stanton getting everyday defensive reps, or at least most defensive reps in the outfield. And obviously, if Giancarlo Stanton is not featuring as the DH, you can justify, Gleyber Torres in the DH spot, and then Anthony Volpe at second base and Peraza at shortstop. That's the only other way I see this unfolding, but I kind of feel like that hurts Gleyber Torres' value as a trade piece if you're not utilizing him as a defensive player. I mean, yes, the Yankees are like, to other teams, the only reason Gleyber Torres isn't playing defense is we want our number one prospect to be called up now. I mean, he's the future of this team. We want him, on this roster. So you could probably skirt around any decrease in value to Gleyber Torres with that narrative. But, I just feel like Gleyber in the DH role does not help this team that much. I think that you probably are better off trading him for like starting pitching support or bullpen support or whatever it might be. So do you think there's a world where we do see Stanton playing defensive reps like to begin the season pretty heavily, and then Torres slots into a DH spot, and then Volpe starts at second base? I think that's probably the least likely of the scenarios.
Yeah, so, end of the day, I think that Torres at DH is something that you could experiment with. As you mentioned, it's not one of those things where, you could do it long term, because Stanton is not a guy who's going to play 150 games in the outfield. That's just not happening. And another issue here is, even if you put Stanton in right field and you DH, you decide to DH Torres, right? When Bader comes back, which you hope, and the timeline is that he's supposed to be back in mid-April, what do you do there, right? I imagine the first thing you do is bench Aaron Hicks and put Judge in left field. But again, you can't do the full-time thing of Stanton in right field. You'd really have to manage a way to get different guys in the lineup. It would be interesting. I think it's worth, evaluating. But the issue is, you have two third basemen in LeMahieu and Donaldson. You have a second baseman in Torres. You have a shortstop Peraza. You have a first baseman in Rizzo. LeMahieu's also going to rover at the other positions. How do you get him, Torres, and Volpe all in the lineup consistently? Like, it feels like something you can't manage long term and get everyone in the lineup, and I feel like that would hurt Volpe's development. And Michael Kay said it best. If Volpe's here is going to start, this isn't a rover situation for Volpe. This isn't a play when the Yankees need you situation for Volpe. If he's on the major league team, they're starting him. He is going to start every day, barring injuries. So, in my eyes at least, the Yankees seem pretty, dead set on, we're going to start this kid if we call him up. I don't think it's going to be a situation where they're like, all right, you'll play through, 3 out of 5 days or something like that.
Yeah, I guess we can both agree that probably the most probable scenario would be Gleyber Torres being traded and opening up a starting job. But for the time being, Anthony Volpe could very well end up in AAA, and that's probably the most probable scenario if we're gonna, give our best guess here and put our chips in on one of these scenarios. But ultimately, we're excited. We got 2 weeks left of spring training ball. A lot of narratives left to unfold. A lot of kind of position battles still ongoing here. It's possible the shortstop job ends up becoming more of a position battle as the regular season continues on here. But if they trade IKF, we can pretty much guarantee Oswald Peraza is going to get that starting job, and he's going to run with it, and they're going to give him the opportunity to prove his worth. So should be interesting. But man, I have to say, I was thinking about the lineup earlier. If we had a top five that looked like Volpe, Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, and DJ LeMahieu, I think that's like one of the best top fives we've had in a very long time. And I think that, Volpe as leadoff hitter certainly is great. Obviously has all the hit tools you look for, and he's got sick athleticism. He can steal bases. He's fast. He's aggressive. He's a high IQ player. He's the perfect leadoff guy. That's probably why the Yankees didn't go out and sign themselves a leadoff hitter or like get additional, talent there that could feature in that role, simply because they knew DJ LeMahieu can be that guy, but, coming off the injury, you just don't know how reliable he's going to be. So, but they probably view Volpe as that everyday leadoff guy, and I think that's what his future holds. So I'm pretty excited, guys. Would love to hear your perspectives below on these 3 different ways the Yankees could get Anthony Volpe on the starting roster for opening day. So we are excited to see how this thing unfolds here, but always happy to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.